Well, aloha there, and let's see. Do I got everything in check? Drink some water. 1 2 1 2 1 2. All right. Let's see where we can leave to. Do. After going through his death and then part of his legacy, yeah, it just showcases this. Yeah, Menard, yeah. When it came to afterwards and further beyond, still more. Let's talk about it. Yeah. For many years, he has fought his enemies in the House of Burgess, and the council was replaced by Hugh Drysdale once Robert Wilson was convinced to act. There's the modern view, which this is where I left off because of timing. And how I actually talked about when it came to the legacy, they should talk about all the participants in the case instead of just the individual himself. After all, you could say Blackbeard is not an interesting person, but what he situated with himself and with other people made his story interesting to follow. But let's see what it follows in the modern view of his legacy, him as a person, maybe more. Modern view. Official views on pirates were sometimes quite different from those held by contemporary authors, who often describe their subjects as despicable rogues of the sea. Privateers who became pirates were generally considered by the English government to be reserve naval forces and were sometimes given active encouragement. As far back as 1581, Francis Drake was knighted by Queen Elizabeth when he returned to England from a round the world expedition with plunder worth an estimated whoa, £1,500,000. Royal pardons were regularly issued, usually when England was on the verge of war and the public's opinion of pirates were often favorable, some considering them akin to patrons. Economist Peter Lesson believes that the pirates were generally shrewd businessmen far removed from the modern romanticized view of them as barbarians. Something I also wanted to point out because of the whole war and stuff, because you must understand when it came to 1581, that was almost 100 years since 1492 happened when it came to Christopher Columbus and his voyage and discovering the Americas, along with expanding the Spanish Empire. The funny thing about the end of Blackbeard's reign, and with his death followed a bunch of pirates who pretty much started dying out around the 1720s, is when a decline of the Spanish Empire in America started to go downwards due to many of the conquistadors not able to find any fame anymore when it came to the conquests. Therefore, the expansion of their colonies. You could sort of say that the end of the pirates existed just because there was no need of them anymore. The English wanted to compete against the Spanish Navy, and now since the Spanish are dealt with and they're in equal footing with other nations like France, then there is not much of a need for the privates. Or you could sort of say there's a reason why they didn't deal with colonial matters when it came to them actually having a field and other people trying to hunker down Blackbeard and other pirates because of their own interests. After all, when you think about the 7 Years' War or the American French, not the American French Revolution, the American Revolution, you can sort of say somewhat with the French Revolution with Haiti, but it shows that there is a relationship between the affairs of the colonies and the mainland of the Empire of Britain or Great Britannia. So that could also be another thing when thinking about it. After Woodes Rogers' 1718 landing at New Providence and his ending of the Pirate Republic, piracy in the West Indies fell into terminal decline. With no easily accessible outlet to fence their stolen goods, pirates were reduced to a subsistence livelihood, and following almost a century of naval warfare between the British, French, and Spanish, during which sailors could find easy employment, lone privateers found themselves outnumbered by the powerful ships employed by the British Empire to defend its merchant fleet. The popularity of the slave trade helped bring to an end the frontier conditions of the West Indies, and in these circumstances, piracy was no longer able to flourish as it once did. Besides Great Britannia's big naval to be able to compete with the Spanish Armada, the access of a Grand Navy into their territories means that there is a rule of law or law enforcement in that mind, even when it comes to the Navy being military, just governing everything. But yeah, it's equivalent to having a mercenary army because you don't have an army to your own, but now you have that army, so there's no much need for the mercenary. Since the end of the golden age of piracy, Thatch and his exploits have become the stuff of lore, inspiring books, films, and even amusement park rides. Funny enough. But, I mean, that also goes to show when it comes to how Pirates of the Caribbean was such a phenomenal movie that people end up not talking about it. I think the only place would be when it comes to Treasure Island. And, you have the 1960s where they popularized it with the movie. But Pirates of the Caribbean, that's what modern day romanticism and pirate culture during the Caribbean and the golden age of piracy came to be. Something interesting to think about. Much of what is known about him can be sourced by Charles Johnson's A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates, published in Britain in 1724. A recognized authority on the pirates of his time, Johnson's depictions of such figures as Annie Bonny and Mary Read were for years required reading for those interested in the subject. Readers were titillated by his stories, and the second edition was quickly published, though author Angus Constam suspects that Johnson's entry on Blackbeard was colored a little to make a more sensible story. A general story, though, is generally considered to be a reliable source. Johnson may have been an assumed alias, as Johnson's accounts have been corroborated in personal and official dispatches. Lee, 1974, considers that whoever he was, he had some access to official correspondence. Constant speculates further, suggesting that Johnson may have been the English playwright Charles Johnson, the British publisher Charles Rivington, or the writer Danielle Defoe. No relation to the actor. In his 1951 work, The Great Days of Piracy, author George Woodberry wrote that Johnson is obviously a pseudonym. Continuing, one cannot help suspecting that he may have been a pirate himself. Which is quite interesting when thinking about it, because something that I really like about learning about the golden age of piracy in the Caribbean is that the legacy is more big than what people are probably disgusted to talk about, where it pretty much shaped up how naval warfare would have been. I'm thinking in the lens of the American Revolution when it came to the American patriots who tried to take on the British headline in their own country of Great Britain and other ships by using actually private pirate type of tactics and such. Along with, when it came to the 7 Years' War and on, the pirates really became a power uh, force that actually, shaped much of naval warfare during that period. After all, I can bet that when it came to some of the loyal British who actually hunted down all these pirates, later uh, convinced much of the British Navy to actually tack on um, dangerous, I wouldn't say just tasks, but also dangerous foes, which, later it could be against the Spanish and the French. Because after all, the British Navy has a lot of military stories about its heroism, like a few people, along with how they would have people to fight along themselves without, their own consent. The whole involuntary servitude in the Navy ships and such, which, it became a really damning legacy because once the United States became its own country, um, British naval men still would kidnap Americans and ship them into military service, especially during the was it Napoleon? No, Napoleon. It's not the Napoleon Wars. Napoleonic Wars and such. So, despite his infamy, Thatch was not the most successful of pirates. Henry Every retired a rich man, and Bartholomew Roberts took an estimated 5 times the amount Thatch stole. Treasure hunters have been long abused themselves searching for any trace of his rumored hoard of gold and silver. While nothing found in the numerous sites explored along the east coast of the U.S. has ever been connected to him, some tales suggest that pirates often kill a prisoner on the spot where they buried their loot, and Thatch is no exception in these stories. But that no findings have come to light is not exceptional. Buried pirate treasure is often considered a modern myth for which almost no supporting evidence exists. The only proof about this was in a book called Treasure Island, which was more romanticized myths and tales than actual historical account of the pirates. After all, one of the most famous thing in Treasure Island is a bunch of pirates having exotic birds, particularly tropical birds on their shoulders, and to speak for them. So that's quite an interesting to think about. However, when it comes to the killing someone as a protector of the pirate, could be probably a practical tactic as usual. If you find a hole and you end up digging a dead body, you think, oh shoot, there's just a bunch more dead bodies. It's useless. It's like a cover. The available records include nothing to suggest that the burial of treasure was a common practice, except in the imagination of writers of fictional accounts such as Treasure Island. Such hoards would necessitate a wealthy owner, and their supposed existence ignores the command structure of a pirate vessel, in which the crew served for the share of the profit. After all, there's a big reason why quartermaster is the second man in charge of the whole pirate ship, not just the captain, along with a bunch of other people, especially those who end up doing partnered raids during the Pirate Republic in Nassau. Okay, got that. The only pirate ever known to bury treasure was William Kidd. The only treasure so far recovered from Thatch's exploits is that taken from the wreckage of what is presumed to be the Queen Anne's Revenge, which was found in 1996. I'll be damned. As of 2009, more than 250 artifacts have been recovered. And I think this person misspelled it. Its selection is on public display at North Carolina Maritime Museum. Various superstitious. Actually, let me see what I have. Okay. Various superstitious tales exist of Thatch's ghost. Unexplained lights of sea are often referred to as Thatch's light, and some recites claim that the notorious pirate now roams the afterlife searching for his head, for fear that his friends and the devil will now recognize him. A North Carolinian tale holds that Thatch's skull was used as the basis for a silver drinking chalice. Chalice. A local judge even claimed to have drunk from it one night in the 1930s. What the hell? Okay. Sure. I mean, it's also reminded me of the story when it came to Cocaine Bear. On not the news movie that's going to come out, but the actual story of Cocaine Bear. Film renditions of his life include Blackbeard the Pirate in 1952, starring Wes. No, actually, I missed this part. The name of Blackbeard has been attached to many local attractions, such as Charleston's Blackbeard Cove. His name and personality has also featured heavily in literature. He is the main subject of Malachi Douglas' fictional 1835 work Blackbeard, a page from the colonial history of Philadelphia. Film renditions of his life include Blackbeard the Pirate, 1952, starring West Country native Robert Newington, who exaggerated West Country accent is credited with popularizing the stereotypical pirate voice. Blackbeard's Ghost, 1968, Blackbeard Terror of Sea, 2005 and 2006, Hallmark Channel miniseries Blackbeard. From the Hallmark Channel, no less. The actual, yeah. It's American television channel owned by Crown Media Holdings, yeah, which owned by, okay, yeah. Primarily targeted as families, it featured a mix of television shows. It's pretty much the Christian family channel. Pretty safe, pretty typical. You won't see anything you will see in Game of Thrones. But why Blackbeard? Maybe because he actually looks like Santa Claus. Just, different get up, he just fires up his horns. Yeah, why not? He's like Santa Claus. Okay. Parallels have been drawn between Johnson's Blackbeard and the character of Captain Jack Sparrow in the 2003 adventure film Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. Blackbeard is also portrayed as a central character in 3 TV series by John Malkovich in Crossbones 2014, by Ray Stevenson in seasons 3 and 4 of Black Sails 2016 through 2017, and by Taika Waititi in Our Flags Means Death. Huh. Actually came. Never heard of this movie. Weird. In 2015, the state government of North Carolina uploaded videos of the wreck of the Queen Anne's Revenge to the website without permission. As a result, Nautilus Production, the company documented the recovery since 1998, filed suit in federal court over a copyright violation in the passage of Blackbeard's Law, and by the North Carolina legislature, the General Assembly. Before posting the videos of General Assembly passed Blackbeard's Law and see Gen Stat 121 through 25B, which stated all photographies, video recordings, or other documentary materials of a derelict vessel of shipwreck or in its contents, relics, artifacts, or historical materials in the custody of the agency of North Carolina government or its subdivision shall be in the public record pursuant to Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. On 5th November 2019, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments in Alien vs. Cooper. The Supreme Court substantially drink water. Subsequently ruled in the state's favor and struck down the Copyright Remedy Clarification Act, which Congress passed in 1989 to attempt to curb some infringements of copyrights by states. So I'll be damned. So there is actually more information about Blackbeard now because of some discoveries. However, when it comes to the wide public, there tends to be a huge hoopla when it comes to copyright because what is it? There's a lot more romantic history of the pirates down in Hollywood, since Treasure Island since the 1960s, than the actual real life proof. But now, because of all this mixed match and stuff, there is now a copyright act that was removed to give more leniency in copyright material so they could showcase it. So that's actually pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like we can learn more about it because seeing that when it comes to pirates, there is now an interest to actual history of not just pirates, but when it comes to Vikings, ninjas, that people want to follow instead of just a romanticized version. After all, you could say that that was the case when it comes to World War II movies in Hollywood, specifically Hollywood, because watching the old movies and them being very schlocky action-backed hero movies is quite a contrast versus the 1990s and a bunch of World War II and military shows about the everyman and stuff. You know, like i.e. Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, and the Pacific. And not many people watch the Pacific. And yeah, that was around like late 2000s, but you know, that was pretty cool. That was a really good series. Alrighty, so we normally think about pirates as sort of a bloodlusting, that they want to slash someone or somebody to pieces. It's probably more likely that a pirate, just like a normal person, would probably rather not have killed someone. The pirates knew that if that person resisted them and they didn't do something about it, their reputation and thus their brand name would be impaired. So you can imagine a pirate would rather reluctantly engage in this behavior as a way of preserving the reputation. And it's interesting because, you know, I would agree, it's not just self-preservation, but it's actually keeping what they would say the morale up. Along with also making sure that you're a person who do not take prisoners, because what is it? The saying says that if you do not take prisoners, you won't be taken as a prisoner. Because morbidly, they're all imprisoned or dead or worse. So that's the thing. Peter Leeson. After all, there's also shows more of the reality of their own situation plight than how they are romanticized. Alright, the good old Jolly Roger flags. Whoa. Vetch was known to use black flags with death heads and bloody flags. Bloody flags, which were meant to intimidate his enemies. Nevertheless, the flag, which is commonly attributed to Blackbeard, pictured depicting a horned skeleton spearing a heart and while toasting the devil, was probably never actually used by him. Really? Huh. I wonder if he just used a full black flag. I mean, that's also something they always have put out when it comes to the skulls and crossbones and stuff, which eerily looks very similar to some coat of arms. I guess that it wouldn't be that practical. After all, if in, let's say, people use white flags as a case of surrender or purity or friendship, just because the color white is pretty common color that you don't have to design and stuff, the black flag could be a difference in symbolism. That and also still has the same applications, that it could be used universally like that. After all, it's like having a flag with red, white, and blue to show some patriotism. doesn't just have to be American patriotism. It can also be when it comes to French patriotism. Equivalent to that has to do when it comes to was that some people with flags is like that is the colors that embody the American Revolution and the French Revolution, symbolizing that regardless of what context you have with these colors, if they are together and if they're not in a flag that corresponds each country appropriately, they could still showcase that country and its ideals by the colors. You know, like when it comes to some iterations of the French flag, American flag, and all that such. Like, you know, like a color to represent a team, or at least something. So when it comes to a black background, either when it comes to a skeleton king puncturing a heart, or the skull and bones, the end of it is black. But yeah, let's see what else there is. There's the references, notes, citations, along with make sure I click one. Actually, case it. Alright, yeah, it just leads me to this biography, such. Also there, Glorious Pirate. Let's see where it leads to. Okay, it's just this link of the book. So if I go up when it comes to what is it? The person who ended up having a chalice and ended up getting drunk with it during the 1930s, which is quite funny because with the end of Prohibition, I guess that he spent much of the 1930s, other than, you know, being in the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, right in the middle of it, he's just drinking a lot first off. So yeah, it leads me to here, leads to here. Alright, so as you can see, it just only leads me much. Now they have cool references like here, it's actual PDF, but then I had to like scroll through all this and try to look at what to point. Other than that, there's also the external links. NYC Supreme Court reveals lawsuit over Blackbeard ship and the lost Spanish treasure ship. Yeah, there's actually an article. Blackbeard's lost ship and stuff. Lead magazine out of the sea. Alright, let me actually click on it here and see what it is. Nope, gotta make sure nothing plays. You have limited articles remaining. Oh shit. Okay, so this is Philip, the Observer, NYC. Oh no, not NYC. NC. Yeah, and it follows this bitch. 2019. Yeah, let me actually skim through this. Get back to you guys. Alrighty. Okay, well, they actually made a full video that actually goes down in detail, and that's what's getting copyrighted. The fact that you also found it like around the shores of El Salvador, in that country, out of all parts of the Caribbean, is cool. But yeah, dealing from the 90s upwards, this is a thing that is being tackled. And yeah, this is the anchor, the lost ship. It's quite funny that they most likely have actually preserved the chalice, but nothing else in the shit, especially when it comes to loot. I guess that they could have found it, like some of the other pirates did, but they probably didn't want to follow their own footsteps and try to discourage all this matters, especially since they don't want to handle much about overseas colonies and just rather focus on the ones in Americas. So that's something. Alrighty. Well, with the time, I'll come back as usual and move on.